Hey everyone, Mr. Shy here. This is something kind of new that I wanna do just to sort of help people out, really. A quick explanation, if you will, of some of the sort of essentials, fundamentals, basics of altering. Um, I'm just in the process of getting ready for a stream right now, and so it kind of, it made a degree of sense to quickly knock this video up. It's not going to have any fancy editing or anything like that. It's not going to be anything mystical and magical and fantastic, but it is going to give you a very basic idea of card prep, which I thought was a good place to start, and something that I know some people have a bit of a struggle with. So, just to talk you through what I've done, I've taken a complete A4 sheet of paper, and I've made a mock-up in Photoshop. Now, you don't have to do this. For me personally, even if I'm doing a hand-drawn piece, an original piece, something that is completely off my own head, I will still do a digital drawing in Photoshop and then print out a mock-up like this, because it allows me to frame everything up where I want it and decide how I want things to be positioned. So in this case, what I'm actually going to be painting here is a black and grey version of this artwork, and I'm going to be making Bolas look like a statue. So I'll be putting sort of cracks and, little marbly patterns into him and that kind of thing. But essentially, we are still starting out with this artwork, which is obviously original artwork from Wizards of the Coast. So I just took the artwork that we're using as a reference, put it onto an actual size image of the card, so it's 63 by 88 millimeters at 300 dpi. And then I made the image layer transparent so that I could see the card parts underneath, and just cut out this one with the marquee tool, this one with the eraser tool, the bits of card that I wanted to show through. That then gives me a mock-up. You turn the transparency back up on this layer and you print it. However, when I print it, I actually make a deliberate point of moving it into the top left corner of my sheet of A4 paper. And as you can see, that's where I've cut it out from here. Now, the reason I do that is because I'm a bit tight and I don't really like waste. So by then folding this in four, what I can then do is take my card, take some painter's tape or some masking tape. I prefer white masking tape personally. I think painter's tape's a bit, bit of a waste of money, but whatever. We can apply a strip of this to the back of our card, and then flip that over, fix it to our paper here, and we end up with a beautiful centered card on a piece of backing paper ready to work with. This will now allow you to freely move and spin while you work, which is obviously very useful. Priming next, very, very simple. I really like this paint from Games Workshop. Now, I will say I do not like Games Workshop paints for altering in general. I find them very difficult to blend with. So as a typical choice, I will use golden fluid acrylics. You've probably seen those a million times before. I can just reach for a bottle here. These are kind of the industry standard for altering. Pretty much everyone uses them these days. I think it was Klug that popularised them. They're very, very good. They blend really nicely. They have a lot of true transparent colours. GW paints don't have a lot of true transparent colours. Most of them are base white, or they have a filler in them that makes them opaque. And that can make certain types of glazing and blending really difficult, which I personally don't like. So I use Celestra Grey from Games Workshop as a primer, but for everything else it's golden fluid acrylic. And to prime these is really, really straightforward. To be honest, half the time I don't even take it out of the paint bottle. I'll just grab a little bit of my painting medium. I use Painter's Milk from the Painter's Bakery, which is actually a company that I own. You can just use water if that's your wish. Water will do the job. I use the medium just because it helps keep the paint flat and nice and matte, and that's something that I like about it. So, once I've got this to a nice consistency, by working a bit of something wet into it, wet thing of your choice, I'll then just start priming with nice, fast, broad strokes, being fairly tight to the box, etc., but not really worrying too much about it. And the reason that I don't really worry too much about it is because at the end, if you've overpainted into any areas where you don't want paint, you can just nip in with a toothpick and you can clean those up very simply, very quickly, and you're not going to have any issues. So I don't really see the point in being too fastidious at this stage, in taking too much time. However, I do like to minimise the amount of cleanup because it is a tedious task, so I'm not going to go wild and just lather paint everywhere. You know, I'm not going to be ridiculous about it. I'm just going to get it in the approximate areas that I'm happy with. And as you can see, I mean, I'm just using a size 2 brush here, size 2 round. I do sometimes use a filbert brush or a flathead brush for this process. It is a little bit quicker, but with this new historic frame that's appeared in more recent sets, I think this started in Dominaria, didn't it? Or no, in fact it wouldn't have. It would have. It must have started earlier than Dominaria because this set's before that, isn't it? But yeah, you know, with this frame, you do have to just be a little bit more careful. You can also see that I'm knocking excess paint off of my brush here on the corner of the page. That's really important. When you're priming, the absolute worst thing you can do is just plaster a ton of paint on, because what you're going to do is just create these horrible, unhealthy ridges all across the surface of your card, which are going to stay through all the layers of paint that you put on top, and they're going to show in your final piece, and that is miserable. Even finishing spray really struggles to get them out. So we try to avoid laying on the paint too thickly, so we just sort of use the corner of the backing paper here, you know, kind of as a palette of sorts. I use a wet palette when I'm actually painting. So a wet palette's not great for taking excess paint off of your brush, and so you'll see I always have a piece of tissue at hand, which you can see that I've rolled my brush in while I've been painting. And the reason I have to do that is because a wet palette, being a wet surface, it kind of just moves paint around the bristles of your brush. It doesn't really take it off. And so that's why when I'm priming, I tend to just use this backing paper to take off my extra paint, because I'm not generally going to bother getting my wet palette out and setting it up just for the sake of priming a card. So once you've got one layer on like that and you're reasonably happy, let that completely dry. Give that a solid 10-15 minutes at least. You know, Citadel paints are fast drying, and they will dry thoroughly in that time, but if you rush this and you try and apply a second layer of primer now, you're going to tear the layer underneath, you're going to lift it, you're going to have bobbles in the surface of your paint, excuse me. It's going to be miserable, it's going to be a really bad time. So just be patient, walk away from it for 10 minutes. I'm not going to do a big production video where we TV magic fast forward and suddenly you can see this now fully primed. I'm going to trust that you guys know how to do exactly what I've just done there, but do it twice. I shouldn't think that that would be difficult. So I'm just going to quickly now explain to you the next part of the process. We'll keep this just at the top of the shot there, somewhere right there, and we'll just bring this guy back in a minute. Okay, so what is this for? What is this mock-up for? Well, actually, let's move that out of the shot. It's going to be in my way otherwise. Over in my pot of tricks, somewhere, I have one of these guys. This is a Winsor & Newton graphite rod. Sorry, Faber-Castell. This is Faber-Castell. I used to use Winsor ones. When I rebought some, I bought the Faber ones. The Faber ones are fatter. And this is literally a pencil lead, a big, fat pencil lead. As you can see, you know, fingers for scale. I have got slightly sausagey fingers, but fingers for scale. You can see it's a pretty beefy bit of equipment. And what this is going to do is it's going to cover way quicker than a pencil. So we flip over our reference and we scribble on the back with our graphite. Thank God I've just moved my microphone so that it's closer to me. Before it was closer to my work area, and you would have barely heard me over this scribbling sound, but fortunately that's not a problem anymore. Just scribble, 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 scribble. I like to turn the other way and do a little bit as well. I don't think that really does anything. I think it's purely psychological, but I like it. It makes me feel better about myself. There we go. Okay, so once that is covered, what we can now do is if we grab a mechanical pencil, when we trace over this now, and I can do a little bit because like this bit of the wing here, for example, isn't going to show. So if I just come down here a minute, if I just trace this little bit of the wing here, or if I, you know, if I I snap my pencil, or if I write something there on the area that we don't need, what you're going to see is it's very faint. In fact, I'm not even sure if my camera will pick it up. Oh, can we get that? Can we get that? I can see it with the naked eye, but I don't know if you can see it on the camera, because this is black. And this is why these last minute improvised videos are always a bit weird. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just move over to here a second and I'll just show you here. So if I scribble just here, there you are. That's much better. So you can see now that that transfers a nice faint pencil impression. We'll get a bit of better focus on that. Is that something like focus? Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. Okay, so you can see that that transfers a faint pencil impression down onto the card. So what this allows you to do, essentially, is line up the reference on the card. And the way I do that, that's probably worth explaining. I don't want this video to go too long, but I think we can keep it under 15 minutes. So what I do is I just cut out around this reference. And I leave these little tabs at the top. You see? So as I'm cutting, I'm creating these little tabs at the top. And because I have those little tabs now, what I can actually do is line the reference up perfectly over the piece, get it in situ, and then once it's exactly where I want it, I can just grab a bit of tape here and a bit of tape here, and I can lock it in position. And then what that's going to mean is that when I then do that trace down using my mechanical pencil, the card's going to be absolutely locked in place by the painter's tape here and here, and that's going to mean that I'm only going to be transferring where I planned to transfer to. I'm not going to have any stray lines turning up in areas where I don't want them. From there, that's then going to give you a grey line drawing on the surface of your card. You're going to go over that in black if you wish. You don't have to, but it's very easy to lose those pencil lines during the process of painting. So I personally prefer to go over it with a bit of black paint. I'll just thin down some golden fluid acrylic until it gets to a sort of slightly inkish kind of, you know, fairly watery consistency, and I'll just ink that in. And I'll usually do that with a size 1. This is a Rosemary & Co size 1, recommended to me by the amazing Chris Tooley. If you're not familiar with him, these are now my brushes of choice. They are absolutely beautiful, beautiful, really, really well made brushes. And so, yeah, this is what I'll use for pretty much the entire altar, be it lining, be it infill. The only time this number 2 comes out is when I'm painting larger areas. And I don't tend to take very good care of these number 2s, to be honest. But the number 1 will do pretty much everything for you. So, you know, just a couple of brushes, keep it cheap. And I think that's basically everything you need to know for how to set up an altar. So that is how I get myself ready to paint. If you want to see the actual process of me painting a piece, I do stream pretty much every altar that I make. Maybe not 100% of them, but most of them. And you can catch me at twitch.tv/thatmrshy. If you head over there and give me a follow, you will get notifications. As long as you are following, you will get notifications when I go live. So you will know when a stream is live. You can come along. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, we're altering. Thursdays and Fridays, we paint miniatures. We've got a lovely community over there. Lots of opportunities to have your questions answered. And it's a good way to see things follow on from this prepared state and how we then turn that into a finished altar. So yeah, thank you for sitting through 14 and a half almost minutes of me waffling about how to prep an altar. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you found it useful. If you did, share the video about, and do comment below to tell me what you think and whether you'd like to see more little beginner tutorials like this in the future. Thank you, everybody.